Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my Xbox, Bethesda, and Resident Evil Not E3 2022 impressions. And I might have some other sprinkled kind of stuff throughout. There might be some other kind of gaming news that pops up that I might do some other kind of videos on at this point. However, since this falls around the traditional E3 times, and Xbox had their showcase on Sunday with some extended kind of previews that I really didn't get into on like the 14th, while Capcom's been doing this kind of stuff, I kind of wanted to get into this stuff that kind of interested me. And overall, I do think that Xbox did a good job with their showcase, mainly because they showed a lot of variety. Now, granted, not everything was interesting to me. So sometimes I'd be like, this really isn't my stuff. I'm not that much into racing games, certain kind of things. I'm like, what the fuck is that kind of thing? But overall, I was pretty happy with it because I liked seeing what they had for Redfall. However, what I will hit on for this thing is they said that they mainly were doing like gameplay stuff, and there were some things in there that weren't really gameplay. They were pretty much just CGI things, or like, this is what a representation would be. So cagey ass marketing aside with that kind of shit, when you're going to show gameplay, please just show gameplay. Like Redfall, I was really interested with that kind of stuff because it's like, hey, it looks like Left 4 Dead shit with various kind of heroes, kind of like hero kind of stuff from like Overwatch with different powers, fighting vampires. I'm like, alright. Back 4 Blood really wasn't my kind of speed. I don't really give that much of a shit about like the card kind of system, so I'm like, I'm interested in this. Arcane has been pretty cool with their kind of stuff that they've done, and I'm like, all right, let's kind of see what they kind of want to do with it. I do like the art style's kind of different, and I kind of want to see what they kind of do with that kind of stuff, and what other kind of gameplay mechanics will be instituted, because they show them utilizing guns and everything like that. You got your certain ones that's got your shotgun, your kind of sniper rifle and all that. Giving us kind of background about how they fucking took the sun away from the island that they're at, and that they're kind of going to be dealing with that kind of stuff, and just seeing it in action was nice. Now, granted, they didn't get too in depth, but they at least showed some kind of stuff, and perks and skill tree kind of shit things. And I'm like, okay, we'll definitely be looking forward to that. Now, granted, I'm a person that's already invested in Game Pass, so what the thing is, I learned from Halo Infinite, I'm at least fuck around with it on Game Pass first, and then kind of see if I'm interested in playing it. But granted, with how it looks and how hopefully it'll play, I'll definitely at least use Game Pass to ascertain how it plays, to be like, alright, cool, I kind of go for it. The next thing up was, I think, let's see here, High on Life. I did not expect this motherfucker to kind of pop out. It gave me Oddworld Stranger's Wrath kind of vibes, i.e. kind of living gun kind of stuff, and it's a first-person shooter, and evidently this like alien race is using humans as drugs, and you're fighting back with all these weapons that can do all this different kind of shit, and I'm like, wow. And it actually looks pretty decent, and it's going to be coming on Game Pass, and it's going to be like, all these games will be within the next kind of year, so I'm like, give me some of that, because I want to check that out. I'm like, wow, that wasn't even on my radar. I didn't know what was going in there, and it's by Justin Roiland. I'm like, that'll be in October. I'm like, that's definitely one I want to check out, because I want to see how like the story works out, how the gameplay works out, and what kind of goes on with that. So that was a nice kind of surprise for me, and I'm like, thank you for that. That's a good one to kind of like look into. Let's see. We also got stuff on like Hollow Knight Silksong. Not really that much into the Hollow Knight, so I'm like, alright. Riot Games coming, I'm just like, I'm okay. Plague Tale, that gameplay looked pretty interesting. I've not played like the first Plague's Tale, so I really couldn't like give that much of a kind of thing about it. So I'm like, alright, the flight simulator with the Halo Infinite Pelican, I'm like, okay. We got our Overwatch 2 multiplayer early access. I'm just like, I haven't really been into the hero shooters and kind of MOBAs, so I'm not that much into that. If you are, cool. Look more into that information and really kind of work it out. I'm more given the impressions of the things that really kind of excited me, and then the stuff that I'm just like, okay, that's there, but I'm not that much interested in. Elder Scrolls getting High Isle. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I've played Elder Scrolls Online, but I've not kept up with the expansions. I got my fill out of it. I'm like, alright, cool. So if you're into it, look into it. Like Fallout 76, I'm like, hey, the pit, that's cool. Haven't played it, don't plan on to. I hope they continue to, like, make the game actually worth it. Arc 2 stuff that evidently is going to have Dark Souls combat, which immediately was like, I'm good. Scorn getting its trailer, I'm like, okay, this one's interesting to me. Mainly because I want to see what they do gameplay-wise. Though, granted, it does look more on the icky kind of thing, and I don't mind gore to a certain extent. However, if it's, like, really grotesque and makes me want to shiver or whatnot, I usually am like, I'm not cool with that, you know? No, granted, I do want to see how this kind of works out. Let me see what's up with that. That is saying that it'll come out in October, and that's definitely one I would check out Game Pass-wise just to see what kind of works out with it. Because we don't know what the story is with this game. We keep seeing kind of gameplay of, like, utilizing weapons and going through weird, fucked up kind of architecture and the atmosphere, so it's got that. However, if you don't really have a story to kind of, like, get you through that, that's kind of where my interest, like, I need the story to kind of get the fuller picture of what's going on here. Though, granted, if it's on Game Pass, since it is, I'll at least check it out that way to see what the fuck's going on with it and see if it's got an interesting enough story. And if you're not into that icky stuff, I would definitely recommend not going for it. Though, I did see some more of, like, the Callisto Protocol, made by the people that were, like, behind Dead Space. And, like, just looks like a more modern Dead Space since you guys can't make Dead Space. Cool. I'm interested to see what kind of goes on with that. Flintlock looked interesting. That was a weird kind of one that I'm like, alright, I didn't know anything about that, and that one's coming to Game Pass as well. Yes. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Erebon Shadow Legacy with that kind of stealthy kind of, I think that was the one with the stealth. That looked interesting to me, and I'm glad that we actually kind of saw some gameplay with what was going on with that. And Diablo 4, even though I've heard and seen horrendous, weird, fucking monetization shit with Immortal, I was like, oh, damn, we got some stuff on Diablo 4. I'd definitely be into checking that out, because I had fun with Diablo 3. Now, granted, I got way after the fact, before, like, not when it was released. So, I'm not the best to be like, oh, yeah, I had fun with Diablo 3, okay? Like, it was after shit got kind of fixed and everything, and, like, there was DLC and shit, so I got the kind of, like, one that had, like, the DLC on it. And I'm like, okay, this was kind of interesting. I didn't get, like, deep into it, but I'm like, oh, okay, this looks like kind of fun, so we'll see how it works out. And I liked how they introduced it with, like, the Necromancer. That was a different kind of thing. They did some stuff with Grounded, this Naraka Blade Point thing, which was, like, a battle royale. And the last case of, like, Benedict Fox, something about, like, other kind of games that I was just kind of like, like Sea of Thieves, I'm like, alright, cool. Forza, I'm like, alright. No. Wulong Fallen Destiny, I think, looked kind of interesting. We'll have to get some more kind of information on that one, but if that one's like another battle royale, I'll just pass that by. The other kind of big thing was that we're going to be getting Persona 3, 4, and 5 coming to Xbox Game Pass, and they're all going to be like, Persona 3 is the portable version, which I can understand is kind of weird because technically there needs to be a more unified version that's got all the kind of shit in it, but this seemed to be like the best kind of compromise. Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royale. I'm like, okay, you've pretty much just slimmed down why the fuck I would ever want to get into PlayStation. Because a big thing for me was getting PlayStation for Persona 5. I got Persona 5, I got Persona 5 Royale on it, and I'm also going to be purchasing those. I'm going to be purchasing like 3 and 4 and 5 again on Xbox to be like, I want these, okay? I know you're going to be like, that's weird to buy a game that many times. It's just, I want to show interest on this. Like, I wanted to show interest with, like, Fatal Frame and other kind of things. I'm like, I want these games on Xbox, right? I want Final Fantasy on Xbox. I want these games on Xbox to play them, and that way I'm like, hey, okay, that's cool, because I want to play it there. And granted, I don't mind having to go to another box or, like, PC or whatnot to play those, but I was like, wow, that's big, and that they're going to be on I think they said they were going to be on Game Pass. But I am looking for. I hope that they do a physical thing. If they only do digital, I will be disappointed. However, I will still buy those games to show support for them. And the thing is, after those kind of ones, doing a playthrough on Xbox, I'm fine with, because I do see that I'm pretty much going to have kind of certain dry spells games wise. The next one I'm really looking forward to coming out would be like Saints Row, to see what they're doing with it, and then of course the ones like Redfall, High on Life, the Persona ones that I haven't really played before, even the one that I have played before. I just enjoyed Persona 5. And then we saw an extended look at Starfield, and I'm like, okay, we get bases, we get starships, and we get to explore planets and stuff. And it just looked like Fallout / Skyrim in space, and I'm cool with that. You know, they showed the gameplay, the battle system and everything. It's like, okay, that looks like a Bethesda game, and I'm cool with that. So, thing is, I might, wait and check it out on Game Pass first to make sure that it's in at least a decent enough state, and then kind of, get it. That's the cool thing that I like to do with Game Pass. It's like, I'm definitely going to do that more so because of the lessons I've learned with Halo Infinite. But it just looks like the more kind of stuff that I like from Bethesda games. That the protagonist is going to be silent, so you will hopefully get more of an interesting kind of dialogue that you're able to showcase, because I played Fallout 4, and I think it limited how you were able to roleplay certain things with having a voice protagonist. It didn't completely kill it for me, but I'm like, alright, that's not kind of what I thought was going to be when I picked that option, but okay. Let's see. Those are kind of the big things. No, did you do it? There's a Heidi. Kojima is working with Xbox on a game, and I'm like, okay. I'm not that big of a fan of Kojima, but if the game is interesting, I could check it out. You know what I mean? Pentiment looked kind of weird. I just like that it's kind of like a Middle Ages kind of thing. So we'll kind of see what goes on with that. Let me see. What the fucking shit? That's a weird thing. Then we also had Capcom getting into Resident Evil stuff. Of course, they unleashed the updates that would update 2 make, 3 make, and 7 into Series X boosted kind of stuff. That has created certain problems, mainly within the PC community with mods, though they have reverted those changes to make sure that it doesn't completely fuck them over. We also saw more stuff on the RE4 remake, which definitely looks interesting. I do like how the graphics look and all that. We'll hopefully have to see more of the gameplay, because they showed some of it, but not a lot of it. We also got information on DLC for Resident Evil Village, which introduces a third-person mode for actually playing through the game, and a DLC to play as Ethan's daughter in third person. And I'm like, ooh, okay, it's really kind of weird. I am interested to see what they do with her in the DLC, because you do kind of fuck around in the mind of the, giant mold fucking thing, and do with weird shit like that. But then being able to play through Village in the third person with Ethan would be really interesting. And I know I've talked with certain people. It's like, hey, the first person doesn't work for me. And I'm like, hey, maybe with this, I hate that you have to get a DLC for this thing, but I understand that if you mainly make it in first person, you have to do some weird fucking shit to make it work in third person, and that you would probably have to go DLC route to actually activate that kind of thing. So, I get it. Game development's hard. Game development's weird. This is what we got. But that alone would pretty much pick me of being like, I kind of like to be able to kind of do it, because I tolerate the first person in Resident Evil games, but I would prefer it in third person. And that's coming from someone who primarily likes first person things. It's just, there's certain things that go along with it that's sort of like, they kind of fell into the trap of the kind of Outlast kind of stuff, and the thing is, they don't go far enough and be like, you can't kill shit. You know what I mean? It's still, you can still at least kill and fight things. It's just like, alright. It's weird. Now, granted, I understand that, the old guard, the ones that grew up. It's like, I had them fixed ass cameras. I get it. We all kind of have our focal points on series on what we had. My focal point was third person. A few years from now, a whole generation will be like, my focal point was first person, motherfucker. I get it. It's not saying that I think that the first persons don't have their places. I'm just saying that I'm usually more comfortable with it in third person with what we've done with Resident Evil. Though granted, having played certain fixed ones like the original Resident Evil remake and Code Veronica on the 360 that I did backward compat, those have their own distinct kind of things as well. It's like, even though it's always kind of like when I get down to certain things of like when you're doing subjectivity. AC/DC is my favorite band. But that doesn't mean I think that Van Halen or Led Zeppelin suck. Though granted, I would pretty much be like, yeah, they're better than AC/DC, even though I've got a certain affinity for AC/DC. Like, certain AC/DC songs, just rock it. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what I'm trying to get at with which kind of, like, camera controls really get for me. Because I mainly instituted myself within the Resident Evil community during, like, 4, 5, and I skipped 6, but then I went back to it and I'm like, oh, geez! And then you got your remakes doing the third person. You got Rev doing their third person and stuff. I've just been more in the environment of the third person, and I don't really see the advantages of doing the first person. It's just like, all right, cool. Yes, that DLC I think is coming out in October as well. A lot of stuff's coming out in October. I'm like, all right, cool, because no, I don't like everything kind of like fluffed up because it's really weird. I understand that the pandemic has like fucked off and shifted schedules like ain't nobody's business. But I would really like it if certain game companies just stopped trying to like put everything either in the holiday season or like at certain weird spots. Like, I remember when like January through like March was kind of a dry spell, and then sometimes people would be like, all right, here's the game, and you'd have some banging ass motherfuckers out there. And then everybody's like, hey, look, everybody's making money at this point. Put your shit down there. No, motherfucker, just spread it. I would like to be able to, like, find weird gems at weird times rather than be like, oh, it's the summer. You ain't getting a fucking game now. Though, granted, at this point, I am going to have a fucking game of, like, Saints Row to kind of look at. So we'll see how that goes. But you get my gist. It's like, everybody, find better places. I want games to, like, be able to breathe and to be able to succeed. You know what I mean? So we'll see that. That does, however, because they've all done weird schedules, I'll probably be able to check out the Personas at a pretty good time. But those are the kind of big things that I've pretty much seen. The biggest kind of downfall of having this not E3 is that everybody spreads and does their things at weird times. So it's not like I can condense and be like, hey, here's Xbox's showcase and what I think of it. Here's Nintendo's and here's Sony's. Or just to be like, hey, here's all three because they all decided to do shit in a certain week that they used to do. I really hope they kind of go back to that. I mean, not that I need them to be in one place to showcase everything. I would just like them all to coordinate and be like, all right, you know what? We've usually done E3 this week. How about we just all be like, hey, here's all this stuff so that way we can get all the information out rather than I'm like in July or whatnot. Nintendo's like, hey, motherfucker! And I'm like, okay. I mean, I could just do a random video on it and that's fine. But like, I'd like to have at least some kind of thing to go on rather than just be like, hey, they did this. Or like, but then I'd just be able to talk about that kind of stuff. I just liked having it kind of centralized and be like, okay, this is what this looks like for gaming for like this year. But those are my thoughts on like Xbox, Bethesda, and Resident Evil. I really like that we got some kind of cool stuff and I was able to be like, hey, Xbox, Bethesda, Resident Evil. That kind of works out for me. I'm like, yes. So those are my opinions on what we've got now so far, what games I'm looking forward to. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If there's any other games that I've missed, anything. I like to learn about new games, and if you see some kind of weird, funky-ass shit and aren't sure if I'm into that, I'm always open to, like, checking out and looking at stuff and trying to play stuff. Now, granted, if it isn't for me, I'll just be like, it isn't for me, you know? But I'm always cool to, like, look in and learn about those other kind of stuff. So drop them in the comments below. Tell me about that stuff. If you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.